Hey, it's another episode of That Little Gay Talk Show. It's Boys Day on the Gay Talk Show because Wendy is on hiatus. And sitting in the studio with me is my good friend Martin. Say hello, Martin.
Hi, everybody. I'm back.
It's a porn episode. Yeah, the boys are definitely back in the room.
Well, there's a lot going on with that, so.
Yeah, and let's play some music and get the episode started.
It's That Little Gay Talk Show, Houston's hot mess of a podcast. A funny but thoughtful look at the LGBTQIA plus community.
Ooh, hey Martin, what's going on?
Hi Joel, I am good. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you for sitting in for Wendy for a little bit until she gets back.
Absolutely, Wendy. I miss you. I hope that you and your partner are doing really well. For anybody who listening who does not know, they had a horrible thing happen, and they are recovering. Hopefully, things are progressing and doing well. Wendy, we love you. Mwah.
And you can, by the way, if you're missing a little bit of Wendy, you can catch her on TikTok because she does a lot of TikTok
That's
lives.
true. She does the pajama parties where she sings.
I think it's Monday, Wednesdays, and Thursdays, I think so, yeah. Yeah, I think around 5. I think around. Yeah. So you can catch her on TikTok.
Yeah, no, she recently did a cover of Brandi Carlile's The Story, which is one of my favorite songs from my little gay youth, of being like a teenager who cried too much. And I watched her doing it on her TikTok, and I was like, I totally started weeping again. First of all, if you guys don't know, she is an incredibly talented vocalist.
Yes, she is.
You can hear it in her laughter. You can hear it in how clear she speaks. You can also hear it in all of the live performances that they've done over the years. And they are a vocal educator. They're a teacher. They're a vocal
coach.
Thank you. That's the word. Yeah. So if anybody out there is looking for someone to educate them on how to train, master, and project their voice into something amazing, you can always contact them.
And she's been doing a lot of studio work with a lot of different artists. So she has been kept pretty busy.
Which is why I'm here. Yeah.
Yes. We're also going to have some other guest hosts as well, because I know that you, as much as we would love to have you every week, this is a volunteer effort. So
buses, trains, and wishes got me here today.
Yes, buses, trains, and today you'll be getting home by Uber or by Phoenix, so you will not have to worry.
An Uvu jobber, yeah. No, funny story, because I have not taken this particular route before. And by the way, if you don't take the buses and trains in Houston, everybody complains about the metro system here. It's actually phenomenal.
It actually is.
And a lot of people are like, it's so unreliable. And I'm like, that's because you're in your car 24/7. Shut up. As somebody who does it, one, because it's ecologically fantastic, and two, because I don't have a car. I will tell you right now, like a southbound train, taking the bus that I took over here, it was the funniest thing in the world because I haven't done this route before. And thankfully, I will say they run so frequently in the middle of the day because I got off the train, it stopped too early. And then I was like, oh, look, the Astrodome. That's cool. And then I took a picture of that because I haven't seen it in ages. And then the next train was 2 minutes later. And I was like, cool, I'll be on time. And then the first bus that pulled up at the transit center was broken down, so she wasn't letting anybody on. But they called somebody and had one there in 8 minutes. And I was like, wow, look at us. I will say, though, Houston, Marie, Texas, get your metro together because they're taking a lot of the covered places off in places with a lot of homeless people. Gee, I wonder why. Anyways, and then they're just leaving them open to the sun with concrete seats, which are brutal in the summer. Yeah, so as somebody who loves to stand in the open sun and sweat profusely, there's some spots where they're not covered anymore. So I just wanted to bring that to everybody's attention.
Yeah, well, the Supreme Court did the Supreme Court thing that they've been doing for the last 2 weeks now. They've been throwing all kinds of crap out here. So now being homeless is illegal.
It's illegal now. Yeah. Well, I mean, I wouldn't say now. It's been criminalized for a very long time in very nonchalant ways, but now it's on paper. Because no loitering signs have existed forever.
Yes,
in my
of
memory.
course.
You can't just be a place. And third spaces, as we call them. There's a difference between home, work, and a third space that you go to. And third spaces where you do not have to spend money are almost non-existent. So that's one of the things that we tend to talk about.
Corporate prisons are running out of people to put in prison. So guess what? We live in a capitalist society, basically. So we got to keep those corporate prisons running So and it's easier to do so than crowd our jails with people who don't belong there.
I know. Well, they keep criminalizing marijuana. Who are we going to keep putting in there?
I know. And you realize what really gets me is the fact that, and I have brothers who are veterans. So what gets me is that 40% of the homeless population are veterans. So you're really going to throw veterans in prison?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Is that what we're really doing now? We're just throwing veterans in jail now?
Well, and I don't know if you know this about me, but I used to work at a transitional living facility in Midtown for many years. And one of the things that always used to upset me greatly whenever I'd be like in freshly gentrified areas of town where like, it's kind of like whenever you see a bear in a suburban neighborhood that was built like a week ago. Yeah. And they're like, oh my God, a bear. And the bear's like, this was all woods a minute ago.
Exactly.
Like homeless people have been here. You're the invasive species as the yuppie, right? But anyways, there was one time where this guy was at the coffee shop that we were at. It's like, outdoor seating, and he's asking for dollars. And then I hear this white dude being like, there's places that can help them. And, they do this to themselves. And he's just going to spend the money on booze and drugs. And I turned around and I was like, hi, I work at a place that gets people off the street. Do you know how much the rent is? And he was like, what? And I was like, do you know how much the rent is for room and board and 3 hot meals a day at the transitional living facility that I work at? And he's like, no. And this was like 2017, mind you. And I told him $100 a week. And he looked shocked. And he was like, why wouldn't they be free? And I was like, oh, I'm sorry. Are you confused that a state like Texas, was it at-will employment, Republican corporation chokeholded Texas wouldn't have free homeless programs to get people rehabilitated? If you're not going to give them $1, like there were guys on our caseloads who would, while they're first getting off the street in our program, trying to get their rent together by flying signs on the corner. Yep. Asking for $1 so that while they're putting in job applications and they have that place as the address on their application, they have that phone number as the phone number that you can call, they'll reach my office and I'll go, yeah, I'll get him to call you back. No worries. But while they're looking for employment, they're still panhandling. And I was trying to break this down to somebody the other day and they were just shocked. They're like, why aren't there free programs to help people? And I was like, in Texas? And it's that phrase right there. They're like, oh, yeah. And I was like, girl, ain't nothing free in this state.
Ain't nothing free in this state.
Anyways, and that's my rant.
Well, when you think about it or when you look at it, when you have people who are like, well, why don't the churches do it? Blah, blah. The churches are out here to make money. They're not here to help people.
And I will say the mega churches are the smaller churches.
The smaller churches are doing the work, but
they do. But they're also like, you have to wake up and listen to a 2-hour sermon about Jesus before you get to eat breakfast. And a lot of, especially the communities like ourselves, would rather eat our own leg off than have to do that every single morning. Yeah. So like a lot of the non-denominational transitional living facilities out there in this city and in others where they're not Christian based are not free. And even the ones that are Christian based sometimes are for profit. I mean, like even nonprofit 501c3 status just means that like every red cent goes to us. So yeah. Anyways, but I will also say like the idea of them being like, well, they're only going to spend it on booze and drugs, but even then that's okay. That's their comfort. Okay. Well, thank you for having like a white liberal bit of empathy. That's okay. But also that dollar is probably going towards them trying to get off the street.
Yeah, so, exactly.
Let them have their $5.
Yeah, exactly.
Buy them a pack of smokes. I don't know. Anyways, let's talk about porn.
Yeah. I like how we went from homelessness to porn.
It's a pipeline. It's a pipeline. I mean, I was a homeless sex worker, so
And trust me, back in the day, most of my trans sisters were sex workers. In the day, they had the. What really gets me is when I look at people and they talk about trans people, I'm like, I've known girls who have done all kinds of things to become the people that they are now. That shows me right there that people are willing to do whatever it takes to become their true self.
To achieve a goal, absolutely.
Yes, to become their true selves. Right. And that's something 90% of the population does not do.
Yeah.
We're all living behind masks. We all code switch, so to speak.
Yeah.
So, code switching, that's so natural in the bi community, it's ridiculous.
Yeah. I always called that straightening up as a gay guy, as a queer person. Whenever I was around people that were not part of our community, I'd be like, well, hello, Tom. You know, like I can't do the like, yes, queen, work the house down, boots for your nerves. Like, even though I wouldn't do that anyways, but you know what I mean? Like I try and like control the limpness of my wrist. Like, you know, straightening up or basically putting on the mask was something that is a survival technique. When you talk about code switching, one of the first times I ever heard about that was from a black trans woman. And whenever I was explaining the straightening up thing, she goes, oh, that's just code switching.
Yeah, that's code switching. Yeah.
And I was like, oh my God, that's right. Yeah, it's just hiding around the majority.
Because especially if you listen to old black comedians from the old days, when they would talk about how their mother would have one voice when she's talking to the bill collector and another voice when she's talking to you, and how those voices go back and forth. That's daily life as a black person.
Absolutely.
So when gay people talk about it, it's like, girl, we do that. Girl, I've been doing that for years. I don't know what you.
Well, and then what I also have observed is that there's a difference between the voices and words that are used within like white queer community and spaces, and then the black queer communities and spaces. And I love every time black queer community and trans communities come up with new phrases and words, and then like it's 6 months to a year later, seeing a bunch of the white K-hole muscle queens at the club clacking fans and using the vernacular, and I'm like, I don't think that's for you.
Yeah. What really gets me is these guys are touting masculinity more than anything else, and the biggest queens on the planet.
Right, absolutely. I can't stand it whenever I see a bunch of like steroid rage men being like the dolls, and I'm like, you're not the dolls. No, that's not for you. No, that's for the dolls, though. That's for our trans sisters who are the dolls, but you're not a doll. Like. No. Anyways, that's enough about that.
Yes, that's enough about that.
I do think that, necessity is the mother of invention. And whenever you need something, like you'll rent paid, you will absolutely turn to any resources, skill sets that you have. And I just so happen to be really good at taking dick. So, you know, I absolutely,
I've dabbled in dick for the last few years. I don't know if I'm good at it.
Dabbled in dick.
I don't know if I'm good at it.
Breaking news: Joel, the host of That Little Gay Talk Show, has dabbled in dick for 40 years?
For 40 years.
Oh my God.
Well, let's say for 50, because I was 6 when I discovered it. So
okay.
When I first saw my first penis, not when I discovered. That would be. That's a conversation for a therapist, not for this show.
Yeah, it was warm out that day, huh? Yeah, you just like looked down and you were like, oh wow.
No, it wasn't my own. It's a long story, but it involves my mother, booze, and some dude. So
gotcha.
Yeah, and a keyhole. Which, by the way, when I think about it now, and I think about all the cartoons I watched when I was growing up, I'm like, I actually, as a child, saw my first penis through a keyhole. That's actually kind of odd. That's odd to me in my little ADHD. Yeah, in my little ADHD brain, because I'm like, I saw my first penis through a keyhole. And when you tell that to younger people, they're like, what's a keyhole?
Me and the other boys in the neighborhood all did that thing of like, does mine match yours? And then like dropped, we're like 5, 6 or whatever, and just like in somebody's backyard, like comparing. And we're like, oh yeah, we all have Outies. And then like some of us were like, why does yours exposed versus mine not exposed?
Yeah,
and
exactly.
Then like, the conversation about circumcised versus uncircumcised that would come up like 20 years later.
Those were many games of house that I remember as a kid playing with the little girls in the neighborhood, where I was amazingly enough the wife most of the time. I don't know how I ended up in that role. Well, I know how I ended up in that role.
Because you look really good in an apron.
Yeah. I looked pretty cute in an apron.
Yeah.
I really did.
And domesticity.
Yeah. She worked. I stayed at home and took care of the kids. I was ahead of my time.
Yeah.
I was a house husband before that was even a thing.
You said women's lib.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Now, when it was discussed on genitals, it was, hey, what happened to yours?
I I was one of those kids.
I see mine.
I was one of those kids
what happened
who
to
made
yours?
their Barbies make out and stuff. I was like, and I remember having like multiple Kens, and I also had an Aladdin doll because I always wanted the Barbies that had like the brunette hair, and like the black Barbies that had like Hispanic, quote unquote, where they're just like slightly tan and brunette, basically. But like, yeah, I would always like have the Kens of the different shades, and I always was just like, and I remember one of my cousins being like, "They're both boys. You're not supposed to do that," and I was like, "They're my dolls, and I can do what I want."
I know that my G.I. Joe hung up with Barbie and Ken all the time. Right by the pool with her little... Now, this was the 70s. Black Barbie didn't come around until the 80s.
That's true.
So...
Oh, have you seen that documentary?
Yes.
It's so good, right?
It's
oh, my God.
so good.
Oh, my God.
Now, I've watched another documentary. Now, of course, the Barbie movie had come out, so they had a documentary about, the whole Barbie thing.
Right.
And then I watched the Black Barbie one, and I'm like, this is so fascinating.
It really is.
Because, honestly, I actually thought that Black Barbie was always around, but there were... What it was, I think in the late 60s, early 70s, it was just Barbie with blackface, basically.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, it was basically just Barbie with blackface.
Well, and I think there were
for a little while
of dolls based off of celebrities that you could get. I don't want to say like they had like a Pearl Bailey doll or anything, or like a Lena Horne doll, but I do think that there was like a Dionne Warwick doll.
I think so.
That you could get there for a while. Because like whenever Cher released her doll, of course, like the other ones were like, yeah, why not? They're pop stars, you know? Because Dionne was one of the first like to cross over the pop and R&B.
Yes.
Yeah. So anyways, but yeah, no, the emergence of the Black Barbie, also them trying to figure out like hair consistencies and textures for the dolls. Gag. I loved it. It was so good. Also, I will say, the Barbie movie gave me the greatest phrase of all time as a queer Leo. Whenever she's like accepting her Nobel Peace, one of the Barbies is accepting a Nobel Peace Prize, and she goes, "Thank you, I deserve this." And I was like, yes. So anytime after that, somebody has given me like accolades.
Was that the Issa Rae character?
I think so.
I think that was the Issa Rae character, which I'm like, as a black woman, yes, you do deserve it.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. Are you guys watching The Good Father? Like, where they like, she like pretends like she doesn't know anything about the movie to get them to talk about it. I love that scene. I haven't seen Scarface. I haven't seen any of the Godfathers.
You know what? I have seen the Godfather movies, and I am one of those people who are like, this movie was boring.
I'm not straight.
This movie is boring. I get what's going on, but it's boring. Why did it have to be so long?
I have a huge crush on like Marlon Brando and Al Pacino and like all the like Goodfellas actors that they've gotten over the years. A huge crush on these men. They're always so handsome. Even in their old age, I was always like, ugh. But, well, except for Marlon Brando in The Island of Dr. Moreau remake.
Of course not. Yeah.
Oh, there it is.
Ooh,
but anyways, but yeah, no, I just can't. I get so bored. I'm like, a bunch of men in suits sitting around talking. This is like The Wire. Everybody kept telling me to get into that show, and I just couldn't.
Which, you know what? That show right there is the one show, that and Princess Bride, I think are the two things that white people always say you need to watch. You need to watch these two movies. Okay. I'm like, The Wire, I've heard of.
Yeah.
But when I talk to other black people, they're like, no.
I have heard of it because I have enough of white people in my life, and I'm like, I'm good, thank you. Are there any? I will tell you this right now. I use this same phrase on straight people as a friend of mine once did, because I was talking endlessly about classic cinema to a young queer black guy, and he was like, "No, I haven't seen any of these films." And I was like, "They're from the '40s, classic actors, blah blah blah. It's like part of gay culture. You really should see them." And he was like, "Are there any black actors in them?" And I was like, No. You got me there. I'm so sorry. And he was like, no, you're good. And then I did come back to him later and say, by the way, if you haven't seen the acting of, already aforementioned Pearl Bailey, Lena Horne, Sidney Poitier, please go watch their films because they're amazing.
Wait, there's one that you forgot on this list. And I think, especially if you're a black actor, Paul Robeson's films from the 1930s and 40s.
Absolutely.
Where he played powerful black men.
Yes, he did.
In these movies. Now, most of these movies were made in England, which is amazingly enough, is where I started watching British films from the 30s and 40s, and that's when I ran across Paul Robeson movies, and I was hooked.
Right. But yeah, I use that same line whenever straight guys are like ranting about a show like The Sopranos or The Wire or whatever. And I'm like, are there any queer people in it? And they're like, no. And I'm like, okay, then I'm good.
Well, it's hard to find queer media that is, well, legendary.
Yeah.
I mean, and usually what it is, it's lovely. And I say this with all the love in the world, it involves drag queens.
Or cartoons. Yes. And well, that's. I'm gonna. Keep
and some of our best gay icons from film are most effeminate, which I love, which a lot of gays didn't at the time. But when you look back at, to me, one of the greatest Hollywood gay icons of all time is Hollywood from Mannequin.
Yeah.
Love. When I saw Mannequin for the first time as a young queer man, to see a black queer man who, by the way, in this movie, one of the few movies where a queer person wasn't the butt of the joke, but was part of what was going on, was legendary. Right. Was groundbreaking.
Right.
I'm not going to say legend. Groundbreaking.
Right.
Because even though it was a stereotypical character, it was a character that was it was a fleshed out character.
Right.
It wasn't
just like a fop of being like,
exactly.
Woo, and like popping into the corner real quick and being like, well, girls will be girls will be girls. Let's get you dressed kind of thing.
And if you're black, I think you are trying to decide if Lamar from Revenge of the Nerds or Hollywood from Mannequin, which one is my bigger icon? Okay. Because these are the two black gay men that I saw in film at the time in the 80s and 90s.
Right.
So to see myself on screen, I actually felt like I was a little bit more Lamar than Hollywood. I really wanted to be Hollywood, but I was more Lamar.
I mean, the level of self-awareness that takes is very, very applaudable. Whatever. Is that a word? Did I conjugate that correctly? I don't know. Anyways.
You might have.
Yeah. I mean, what I also will say is somebody was talking about this the other day with my little friend group. We were discussing like straight actors who have the stamp of approval from us to play queer roles, and there's not many of them, and the only one that I can think of is Robin Williams. I'm sorry. Like whenever it came to him in The Birdcage, because somebody else was like, isn't he straight? And like playing a gay role, and I was like, you are a baby. I need you to sit down for a second and listen to the contributions that he made to the queer and trans community and the friends that he had, and the amount of times that he not only advocated for us strongly, but also was our ally, both in the public face and behind the scenes. If anybody had a better scope of queer and trans community and how to portray them respectfully, it was Robin Williams. Him in To Wong Fu, Thanks for Everything, Julie Newmar as John Jacob Jingleheimer Schmidt. Work. Like, he showed up on scene, was a foppy, quick cash change artist, and then just disappeared after 3 minutes, like, after flirting with Chi-Chi the entire time. Like,
let me tell you something about To Wong Fu, which, when I first saw it, I was actually quite terrified of seeing this movie.
Really?
Because you have you have two action stars and John Leguizamo. And I'm like, wait a minute. How is this going to work?
Yeah, because at the time, y'all had never been shown Patrick Swayze as anything other than like Roadhouse. Yeah, that's right.
Or dancing in some movie. And Wesley Snipes, same thing. Action star doing his thing. Huge action star. Not huge, but on his way to being a huge action star in the 80s and 90s.
Physically huge, though.
Like,
oh my God. I have the biggest boner for that man whenever I was a kid. Like every single, what was that one with him and Arnold Schwarzenegger? Oh, no, not him and Arnold Schwarzenegger. What was his name?
Oh, are you talking about Predator?
No.
Comedy or action?
It had like a flat top. It's a futuristic movie. It's sci-fi.
Oh, let's see.
Sylvester Stallone, I think, was in it, or one of them.
Real? I don't think Sylvester Stallone.
One of them. I can't.
And him in the same movie
just
in the
talking.
90s.
I'll look it up. Hang on.
I'm trying to remember what movie would that be?
Thank God for Google. Hang on. Wesley Snipes. Sci-fi movie.
I'll be glad when we get a camera set up in here so that people can see exactly.
It was either the 80s or it was the 90s. I can't remember. Mm-hmm. I'm a baby. Mm-hmm. Oh my God, I'm too far out here in the wilderness. I don't have any signal. That's so funny. No, I will also say that I remember him from Blade. Mm-hmm. Just completely. That was the first film that like put Marvel on the map.
Well, Passenger 57.
Yeah.
Is where I first saw Wesley Snipes.
Okay.
And then it was Blade later on. I think Passenger 57 came out before Blade. But if I remember, I think 57 came out before Blade.
Yeah. So, also, stylistically, Blade was one of the first movies that I ever saw that featured like a predominantly black focused cast of people that were all dark, like cyber goth or industrial. The blood rave from the opening of that movie is still imprinted.
It's still
in my
imprinted
brain.
there.
The second I hear
the one, you know what gets me? That's the funniest part of that movie to me, because imagine being that one white guy.
I know.
In the center of all these vampires, and you don't know what the fuck is going on.
Just blood raining down from the ceiling. You were just lured by something. See, this is why you should never trust an attractive woman who's trying to get in your pants. Straight men who are at least a 4 or below, because
I think
never know.
The X-Men movie told us that in the bathroom scene.
Yes.
X-Men
2.
Yeah.
Never trust an attractive woman, especially one who's interested in
you. Yeah, exactly.
Oh my God.
So back to Tu Wong Fu. I mean, the idea of 3 straight men playing drag queens into the 90s was... Well, it was very controversial at the time.
Oh, yeah.
And a lot of gay people were like, whoa, what are we doing here? But we had already seen it like the year before, maybe 2 years before with Priscilla, which this is actually just an offshoot of Priscilla.
Have you seen the documentary on like the making of and the hoops that they had to jump through for Priscilla Queen of the Desert?
I saw that. Yeah,
it was so good. Like I have watched that movie an untold number of times in my life. What I did not realize was like because like American queer trans history versus Australian queer trans history, right? But I will say that the similarities between like the South here and the conservative nature of like the outback in Australia, very similar. And whenever we're looking at like the surrounding political ideology and environment that produced the scenes, the cultures, and then subsequently that movie, mind-blowing. I can't remember what the documentary is called, but I believe it's on like Hulu or Amazon Prime or something like that. Please go watch it. It's so good. To our listeners. Anyways, we were going to talk about the Supreme Court, aren't we? We got completely derailed on queer cinematography and cinema.
You know what is actually going to lead into the conversation on Warren, because we're literally talking about straight men playing gay roles.
Oh, okay.
So
gay for pay,
Yeah, so gay for pay, exactly. So it's going to lead into gay for pay, which is once again my issue with that. Okay. And look, if you're providing me a service, I have certain expectations of that service.
Okay.
And I feel like that when straight men do gay porn, I feel like I'm not getting... I feel like there's something missing. And I can usually tell in porn when it's...
That's Spock. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, now listening to... I'm following a couple of people who are in the sex work industry or in porn. Okay. And who have been behind the scenes talking about how they set up scenes and all. I'm finding porn right now to be fascinating simply because I'm not watching it as much.
Right.
And I'm not watching it as much... I wasn't watching it as much before Austin Wild. After Austin Wild, Austin Wolf. I keep calling him Wild for some reason. Well, what's happening to him is wild.
No, it's not.
It's been going on for quite some time, and I was wondering when people. It's like an R. It's like an R. Kelly thing.
Yeah.
It's like we know we known in the gay community that this man has issues. And yet we've just let him do his thing.
I really could have done without this happening right before a major conservative, Christo-fascist re-election time happening. Whenever, and this is for anybody listening, I need all of you to be on your best behavior right now, okay? Like literally our entire community. One toe out of line and I'll be showing up at your front door with a very disapproving dad stare, okay? This is not the moment to be acting a fool, because when one of us does it, it reflects on all of us in their eyes. And for Austin Wolf to get caught doing that, like, granted, on Twitter right now, literally everybody is like, well, duh, he does nothing but has scenes with twinks who look like they're 12. Austin LeGrand, I think is his name, is another one that we all have our eyes on. Even though handsome, beautiful, big dick, but I'm like, what? And
because I'm going to be honest, watching porn over the last few years, it's tricky.
Yeah,
it has to be. Now, I feel. I guess I feel a little embarrassed.
Yeah,
a little bit having this conversation, but I think it's a real conversation because men watch porn.
Yeah.
Everybody watches porn.
Yeah,
It's
like peeing in the shower. You either say you don't and you do, or you say you do and you do.
Yeah,
like
exactly.
At this point in time in the 2020s, everybody watches porn. The only person who I can think of that didn't was probably my 70-something, almost 80-something-year-old grandmother, and she's dead now, so R.I.P. But yeah, no, I have moments with people where I'm like, I've had people in my scene or in my circles and stuff get almost accused of it by closed-minded straight people because their partner is shorter than them or looks younger than them, or is like, because there's, at this point it's like, okay, should we only pair up like hairless twinks with hairless twinks? Are like bears not allowed to date otters? Like, are you only supposed to, the like generational age gap issue that a lot of people on Twitter get really mad about, where they're like, no, because you're 40 and they're 31 and that's creepy. And I'm like, all right,
wait a minute, but why are we I'm gonna say infantilizing. Thank you.
Yeah.
Why are we infantilizing adults?
Because the internet will get mad about anything. Now, where that doesn't tend to be as much of an issue is with people who are like, once you hit like 26, 27, 28, 29, you know, like once you hit like the mid-20s, they're not like, well, that's not quite as creepy. But like there's still moments where even I, as somebody who is like, do what you want as long as you're not hurting anybody and all people are consenting, where if you're like 60 and they are 18, I'm like, that's what we call an age-inappropriate relationship, even though you're a legal adult and you can consent to whatever you want to do. Now, if you're living in their house and you are living there for free and you're like somebody in particular who might be talking right now, who had a particular fondness for older men and just like happen to live there, room and board and clean their house, and then just like occasionally do fun, sexy things with them.
Been there, done that.
You know? And I also think it's because we're kind of coming out of this era. Like, whenever my generation was coming of age, we had an entire generation of gay men prior to us who had lost most of their age group of, like, dating, partnership, and marrying. So a lot of us, one, had grown up still with, like, no father figures or getting kicked out. And then we had a lot of the elder men, one generation or two generations above us, who were, like, hot to us, because like I remember a friend of mine telling me like the only reason you like older men is because you have daddy issues, and I was like, oh, slow clap.
Yeah, exactly.
Brilliant. Did you work that out on your own?
Exactly. I told Fritz that years ago too, because I was dating men 40s, 50s.
Right.
When I was in my 20s, and I actively sought these men out.
Right. What we now have, though, is an entire, almost two generations, but Gen Z in particular, and the younger millennials, who have, one, come out to not had essentially a pandemic affect their communities. So they're plentiful, and they're all able to date within their own age groups. Some of them are still attractive. Like, my partner is, I think, 7 years younger than me. And I still have moments where people are like, that's fine. And I'm like, okay. But then I have other people who are like, about it. And I'm like, he's old enough to do everything. Like, he's old enough to rent a car. Like, he got his apartment in his own name. Like, where's the line here? So I don't know. There's...
the way you're describing it like he just turned 18 and just went out in the world like 5 minutes ago.
And that's what I mean. Is like,
and when you
there's
look
a lot
at
of people who are like, well, that's too young. And I'm like, 29? What? Like, okay, it's because this person's 40, this person's 29, that's an age inappropriate relationship. I don't think so. But yeah, no. Whenever circling back, I do think that there is a lead up. A certain hinting that happens whenever we see particular artists in porn circles, adult entertainment artists who focus primarily on a particular demographic who likes to watch big, strong men fucking tiny, hairless boys. And I'm like, Do
you know how many times I actually had to talk to my therapist because I was feeling a little weirded out about some of the things that I was seeing when I was scrolling through my porn. Nothing that I've watched, but I would be like, okay, I'm going to look for Latino dudes. So let me look at Latino dudes. And the first thing I see, big, strong man. And tiny what appears to be a little, I said little boy.
Yeah.
And like little pajamas hugged up with this man. I'm like, what the fuck is going on?
Oh, is it that where like the guys wearing the glasses and they're on the couch?
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm like, what the fuck is going on here?
Family dick.
And then I'm like, wait a minute. Are these boys 18? I mean, I'm having to go up and look up all kinds of stuff and look up the actor and everything. And I'm like, he's 20 something years old, but he looks 12.
Yeah.
That is confusing to a lot of people.
Yeah, it is. Well, and there's also like the push for youthfulness in our appearance, but also like not too young because then that's creepy. And I'm like, with I guess balance and all things. But yeah, no, like I said at the beginning of this, I need everybody to be on their best behavior right now because they already think that all of us are pedophiles just by default. It's their. This is the argument that, and this is something that I talked about a couple of years back, where like the limbic system can be activated in the brain with very simple techniques. And one of them amongst people that have reproduced is simply by saying they are after your children. It worked with racial minority groups throughout the centuries, be they the Shivani, the Romani, the Jews, African Americans and slaves here in the U.S., because black men are after your daughters. And then, of course, if you want to basically outside any outsiders, it is an immediate knee-jerk way to get people to be not only afraid of them, but also angry at them, because there's no way to stop that limbic system from kicking in at that point. And then once you get that kicked in, you can start feeding them the propaganda. In the 1950s, we all know this, but the propaganda being used incessantly of the videos, we've all seen them, of like, this is, an older man trying to get a little boy, and he's like, it's because he's a homosexual.
Yeah, exactly.
I had my uncle tell me one time, he was like, you're a pedophile. And I was like, I'm not a pedophile, I'm a homosexual, I'm gay. And he's like, it's the same thing. And I was like, well, I'm never talking to you again.
Exactly.
Like, and especially when you're here in the South and you've been dealing with this your entire life, it's just one of those things that you're like, all right, well.
You know what? In the South, I have discovered that every family has that one uncle.
Well,
every family seems to have that one, and I don't understand.
There's two in mine, actually.
There was
to ruin special occasions.
Yeah, there was two in mine too. So yeah, there was always that uncle that was always, especially when it's girls, you can't dress that way because Uncle such and such is coming around.
Yep.
She's 12.
Well, he's also the one who told me that whenever I was a kid and I was getting overstimulated and I would do the hand flapping that kids with my circumstances do. He was the one who told me to stop doing that because it makes me look like an R word. Yeah, the 90s, right? Yeah. So like thank you for Anyways, there's just moments with when you're dealing with conservative Christian values where they have already equated you to something terrible. And then we have something like this happen. And I'm like, you were a public figure. And no, please don't do this. Because I know they're going to put him on a skewer. They're going to, I know Fox News is already all over this, being like, see, we were right. And it's just, my butthole is clenching right now. It's making me so angry. I'm like, please stop it. Like, get some help. And I'm going to tell you right now, like, yes, you may be monitored, but if like, psychiatrists are not the same as they used to be back in like the 70s and 80s. Yes, they have to tell people.
Yes.
You may be monitored a little bit more, but the push more and more in like mental health circles and things like that for like rehabilitation over like immediately knee-jerking, like just killing you. Like, it's the same as like a person telling me like, I have these ideals of like self-harm or harming others. And I'm like, okay, do you have a gun? Do you have a knife? Like, is there a plan here? Or is this just ideation? If you have these feelings, please talk to a specialist. I don't know. Oh,
you know, one of the interesting questions I got when I was first starting therapy was that question. Have you ever felt like self-harm? Have you ever wanted to self-harm or harm others? And I guess in my brain, it was a odd question to me. I don't know why in my head it was an odd question to me. Yeah. That I actually started laughing. I don't know about harming myself, but I definitely would harm others.
Right.
And I was making a joke about it.
Psychiatrists have no sense of humor.
Yeah. I realized that therapists do not have a sense of humor.
No, they don't.
And even though she giggled, she went, I'm being serious.
Right, though.
And I'm like, oh, okay, well, no. I have not wanted to harm anyone.
That's so funny. She was
on
like,
purpose.
Do you have any thoughts of harming yourself or others? And you're like, well, the other day. Yeah, and she was like, like taking notes the entire time.
Exactly.
As you're writing down like an incident in
and
traffic.
Then you're like, then you're watching them writing down the notes and you're like, wait a minute. What are they going to say now?
Right.
Am I going to be that guy?
Right. I actually have this conversation often with people as somebody who's been in psychiatry therapy for a very long time, and has like, I'm diagnosed, I'm medicated, I've done my therapy, it's good stuff, go get some. Anyways, and if you're afraid to, for the love of the gods, if you're sliding scale, if you're poor, all of my services were free. Harris County loves to try and help you become a productive member of society, just not be homeless. Anyways, but one of the pop psychology trends that go around. So like several years back, it was narcissistic personality disorder. Every ex that you had was a narcissist.
Yes,
everybody that you know is a narcissist. Now, if you get on Twitter, it's borderline personality disorder. Everything. And they'll list all this stuff that just like indicates that you have it. I'm going to tell you all, anybody who's listening here, okay? I do not have a personality disorder, right? I've checked out with numerous different people. It's one of the first things I asked because I have two people in my family who have a personality disorder, and I asked. I was like actually kind of afraid because one, former drug addict and alcoholic, and two, like I was like, I feel like I'm exhibiting a lot of the signs. And one of the first things my therapist told me was like, just the fact that you're asking me and that you're like being observant enough of your behaviors to be like, I think I might, tells me that you probably don't, because people with like borderline or sociopathic or narcissistic personality disorder are usually the last ones to know. But with a lot of the symptoms that I was describing during like the worst bits of my early parts of recovery and like the mental instability that I was dealing with, was it being considered as an option? Yeah. And then did they settle on like, congratulations, here's your official diagnosis, which is not a personality disorder. You just have like bipolar. And I was like, stunning. Thank you. Like, stop getting on TikTok and self-diagnosing yourself.
Yes, please do.
Stop getting on TikTok and diagnosing
or
other
don't.
people.
I'm sorry. Please don't.
Please don't. Like, stop.
And it's not TikTok either. YouTube is, oh my God. I looked up one thing on YouTube and now I've got 50 videos on narcissistic personalities, all this other stuff, and I'm like, I was just looking at one little thing because my doctor told, and now I've got all these damn videos. Like, and then I started watching a few and I'm like, that sounds like every gay man that I know.
Right. Like, well, and somebody else was trying to tell me that, like, whenever it comes to like these things are always like as a result of things like prolonged exposure to trauma and like, things like that. And I was like, You mean what all of us have been through? Stop it.
I thought PTSD was strictly a military thing.
A lot of people did.
I thought it was strictly a military thing.
Yeah. Well, that's because doctors didn't study women for a long time. So, yeah. Yeah, if it came to like trauma survivors and abuse survivors, if we had studied them or if we had listened to women
because of
earlier,
women, we don't PTSD wasn't?
No, I'm just saying that like if we had really taken into account people who have suffered abuse, neglect, physical, verbal, mental suffering, and studied more so into the effects of that outside of war, because like we knew about like shell shock, I think was what they called it for a long time, especially after World War I, and like PTSD and like, you know, combat trauma and things like that. But whenever it came to it being like a result of domestic abuse, physical abuse, mental abuse, verbal abuse, things like that, psychological traumas, I think that if we had listened to more housewives after World War II and the Vietnam War, we probably would have known about that a bit sooner. You know, I mean,
when you look at old documentaries from people who were in World War I and II and this and that, and you start to hear their conversations, and you're like, whoa, PTSD.
Yeah.
That is, they didn't know what it was.
Yeah.
They honestly, and that put me in the same situation too, because when I got diagnosed with ADHD, I was like, wait a minute. No one had heard of this when I was growing up. We didn't start talking about that until mid-90s. But in the 80s, I'm like, so this explains everything. I was told I was absent-minded. I was called from an old cartoon.
Fidgety.
No, they used to call me Mr. Peabody from the Rocky and Squirrel.
Yeah, Rocky and
Bullwinkle.
Yeah.
From Rocky and Bullwinkle, and all. I got called all kinds of names because of the fact that I was smart, but rather goofy and forgetful, or it was called absent-minded and all this other stuff.
Right.
And when my doctor told me hey, you have ADHD, and I'm like, I'm 55 years old and I'm just now finding out I have ADHD.
Wow.
That's weird. She goes, well, there's one other thing I wanted to tell you about. And I'm like, you know what? The other thing, I know that you want me to go to a special place where I'm going to find out something, but I feel like I'm a little too old.
Well, and we're also from the generations of shut up and sit down. And, you know, get smacked, you know. So whenever it comes to a lot of the older generations dealing with autism, ADHD, or any of the the spectrum disorders, quote unquote, masking is a gift that a lot of us are really good at. And it's something even with, I have an uncle who is a prime candidate for autism. He's just diagnosed as ADHD now, and every time I watch him for more than 30 seconds, I'm like, you are almost 70 years old, and no one has ever clocked you as autistic. You were a locksmith for your entire life. You're obsessed with tiny notches and things. You love it, and you will talk not with, at people about it forever. I was like, and no one ever thought. And well, and his wife the other day when I was chit-chatting with her, my auntie, she was like, you know, the more I read about autism, the more I realize that there are a lot of people in our family who are like prime candidates for it. And I just turned and looked at her and I was like, you don't say.
Yeah, I know, because when I told some of my friends, I'm like, well, my closest friends, that, hey, I just found out I have ADHD. And they're like, ADHD? We thought you might be neurodivergent or neurotypical. Yeah. We never thought about ADHD. And I'm like,
neurodivergent. Well, ADHD is part of the neurodivergence. And, I mean, technically,
is it? I thought it was. I'm so confused because I was told it was different. One, it's kind of like having psoriasis or eczema. They're both similar. The symptoms are similar, but they're kind of different.
Well, that's why it's a spectrum. But yeah, as far as, I mean, whenever it comes to neurodivergence, literally it's neurological differences outside of what is quote unquote the norm, right? So whenever it comes to like autism, ADHD, even certain mental health disorders are starting to be considered like neurodivergence because we operate on different ways, we think in different ways, we perceive information in different ways. But I don't know. You know how like words used to be like common vernacular and then after a while they've become like slurs?
Yeah.
I am thinking in like 15 to 20 years, neurodivergent might be one, because like the R word used to be the medical definition for it. Like whenever you had like learning disabilities or things like that, look it up. I'm not wrong. And
mental retardation. That's what they called it.
Don't say the word. That's bad.
That's what it was called.
Yes, you are correct. And that's what I mean, is that like now it is considered to be a slur because it comes from the Latin retardando, which means to slow down. And that's not actually what's happening.
Well, actually, it's not, because mental retardation wasn't considered a slur. It was considered a condition.
Exactly.
At the time. But the thing is that mental retardation everything fell under that one umbrella.
Right.
After years of figuring out what's happening, that's when we started talking about autism and all the ADHD and everything else, and realizing
we also started discussing
that we can't put that all under the same umbrella anymore. So we have to get rid of that blanket term and start using the correct term.
Well, and you also have people starting to use it as like, oh, well, they're, and that's kind of what I mean about neurodivergent, because like whenever it's like, well, they have ways of thinking that are outside of the norm. And I'm like, okay, well, that feels like a jab. Because one, what is the norm? And two, as more and more of us are starting to realize, latent lifers and, all of us have something. So what is exactly that? I think I literally have only ever met one of these people where it's like they don't have an internal monologue. And I don't get that. They find Seinfeld funny. And I'm like, oh, you're a neurotypical. Like, exactly. Raised eyebrows, right? I'm like, oh, you're like the one person that the psychologist studied and they said this is the norm. And I was like, okay, well, that's scary. They just they lay down at night and they just go to sleep. When they're in the shower, they don't rethink conversations and think, how could I have done this better?
I actually know two people who tell me that they do not have an inner monologue. And I'm like,
I found out about that at the age of 32.
How do I get it?
And I was fucking horrified. I was like, what do you mean you don't have a voice in your head that talks? And then another one that responds.
Horrified. I wanted to find out what they were doing because I can't get mine to shut the fuck up.
Right.
Like, my husband doesn't have an inner monologue, but he has an outer monologue.
Of course. So he like talks whenever he's doing stuff.
But I have an inner and an outer monologue.
I have both. Like my partner literally is like only in his head whenever he's doing stuff around the house, whereas I am the one who like thinks it, and I'll be like doing the dishes or whatever, and I'll be thinking it, and I'm like, and that's why nobody invited you to their birthday party, because I'll be thinking about somebody who was a little bitch about something,
and then like it'll come out in
that I had
conversation
with them like 5 years ago, and I'm like, and that's why your feet stink, and then I'm like, oh, I'm the only one in here, and like he had to get used to that because he's like, you just walk around talking to yourself.
Yeah, I do.
And I was like, yeah, I do, and I promise you, it's better than
I thought
the alternative.
You know what? For years and years and years, people would go, Joel, why are you talking to yourself? Talking to yourself is wrong. Blah, 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 blah. I'm like, I can't help it. I talk to myself.
It's better than talking with yourself.
Oh, I do that too.
It's better than somebody else responding from me, like, because I've worked with a number of different people over the years, and like unmedicated dissociative identity disorder patients are fun because whenever the alter slips in and you realize you're not talking to that person anymore, you're talking to the alter, and you're like, oh, how fun! All right, sorry, I didn't mean to say the wrong name there for a second. Oh man. See, that's what I mean. Is like, what is a neurotypical supposed to be? What exactly are we dealing with here? Like, you love puzzles, because that still sounds neurodivergent. No. Like, you come home at the end of the day and do a crossword, like that still sounds neurodivergent. Like, I don't know. And that's what I mean. Like, ND is probably going to be one of those things in like 20 years from the future. We're going to have like Gen Alpha's kids be like, you can't say that. That's a slur. And I'll be like, okay, thank you.
That's why I'm thinking that now, since I've been in therapy, now I've been in therapy for 6 months. And
congratulations.
And since I've been in therapy, I've started to look at things. And like I said, I have started to look at porn a little bit differently because I knew that I might have had a slight addiction. I think everybody has an addiction to porn on some level. Okay. And I think I used porn for the longest time to not deal with outside relationships.
Okay, yeah.
It was easier for me to just do what I need to do, and I don't have to deal with somebody else.
Yeah.
But now, as I move forward in life, and I'm thinking, I wouldn't mind dealing with someone else. So we're going to have to get away from certain ideals and how we perceive ourselves and how we perceive the world and how we perceive other people.
Right.
And I think porn. I almost said porn. No, I think therapy has changed how I now perceive all kinds of things. I can't watch certain types of porn because I always the porn that I was describing earlier when I would see like 20-year-olds who look like 12-year-olds and everything else, they just brought out trauma from things that happened to me a long time ago.
Right.
And it just made it unenjoyable. Okay. In fact, it made it to the point where I would go to Twitter to get my porn because I just couldn't go to my normal porn sites.
Yeah, that's the other thing. They banned Pornhub and X Hamster, and then I was like, y'all, we're still using Pornhub? Plebeians. Like, what do you mean? I have literally too many friends who are like amateur porn stars who are just like, what do you think of this clip? And they'll send me something, and I'm like, I think that's hot, but could you get another cream pie shot maybe? Like, yeah. I need some better lighting on the asshole. Yeah. Could we rework this one? I think your feet were in the way. Or did you do that on purpose? Never post your feet for free.
But you know what? I found that this has only been a few days after the Austin Wolf thing. And I've already found that some of the porn with the scalps.
Shoot. What's his last name? It's like muscle bear porn or whatever. The Will guy. He's like older, silver bear.
I think I know who you're talking
very attractive.
about.
I have the biggest crush on this man. If you ever listen to this podcast, please just say hi. You don't have to like touch me. You can. I just would like to meet you. You're such a sweetheart on camera, and I think therein is a difference for me because what he is doing is a daddy role. Which is like, of course, a dom and kink thing. And then he will have boys of different builds and different ages because boy is a term in the leather and kink community. It does not have an age limit and it does not have a body type. And what they're also doing is in many of these, they're portraying like the daddy boy dynamic, which is a bit more nurturing than like a sir and a sub or like a handler and a pup or just whatever. So there's a lot of his that are very nurturing and they're very like, it's okay, I've got you, like you're doing so good for me, I'm so proud of you type of verbal play that I think is very attractive, but that's also because I do that with the boys that I dom for, and I find that they tend to be very appreciative of that as well. I will also say now that I'm in my mid-30s, I have the like 25 to 28 to 29 year olds being like, hey daddy, and I'm like, where did you come from? But I also have the daddies who are like, hey, feel boy,
like
so.
you're only in your mid-30s. I feel like you are still not old enough to be called daddy. I feel like that you should be in your 40s by the time somebody calls you daddy. I find it no.
Well, at least I'm not like a 22-year-old being like, I'm daddy. And I literally met one the other day where he was like, I'm daddy. And I laughed. Like, I try and be so tactful in spaces like that and in moments like that. But I was just like, ha! Like, I couldn't help it.
You know, I'm not trying to pull rank. I mean, I'm not here trying to pull rank. If you are young and you think you're a daddy, you're going to have to show me.
Prove it.
You're going to have to show me.
Yeah. Because if you're too young to rent a car... And if you don't have like a credit score of like 700 or higher, or like bills in your name, a Roth IRA, what are you doing calling yourself daddy? Like, because literally whenever I was young, the criteria questions for interviewing for my daddies was like, what do you got going on in that 401k? And they're like, I have a Roth. And I'm like immediately aroused. Because it's not that I'm after your money. It's just that you're savvy enough to teach me. That's the mentor part of this whole thing. Because we didn't have our parents to teach us. I need the fairy godfathers. I need my fairy godmothers. I need my dads and moms in this community. There's a difference in these roles. Of course, some of them are not sexual. Some of them are. I have my kids in this scene that I'm like, hey, did you eat today? And they're like, actually I didn't. I got hyper-focused on polishing boots. And I'm like, well, as you should, but also stop and eat something. But anyways, yeah, I like the Will guy because the dynamics of his videos, one, like most of the boys, quote unquote, that he plays with are bearded. They're hairy. And even if they're not, and they do look smaller in frame, they're still adult looking, smaller in frame. We shave all the hair off of your body and make you look like you're 12 years old with Botox and then pound you into a bed. Or when you, I've seen clips of ones where they like wake them up and they're cuddling a teddy. But this is another thing though, is that like there's a difference between like littles with daddies and mommies who take it to a place where it's sexual or not. Most of the littles that I know don't. It's like a healing of your inner child thing. And I don't know, like it's a fine line to walk. Basically, the fine line is they don't have child porn on their computers.
Yeah, exactly.
Like whenever it's all consenting adults who are doing this, if you're role play however you want to. Like I know people who dress up in latex outfits and prance around their yards as ponies while somebody else cracks a whip. One of my friends who's a dominatrix recently got asked if she ever does like matador and bull play because the sub who was inquiring was really interested in being the bull. And I told her, I was like, hey, matador pants make everybody look good. And you can lead them around by the ring in their nose. And it's kind of hot.
Matador and bull play.
Yeah.
That's a new one on me.
Ole, yeah. It was kind of hot. I was like, I would be into that. Like, let me grab that septum. Who's my big sexy Ferdinand. Anyways.
I think we're going to have to, you know what? We're going to have to talk about that on another episode because there are some new things going on in the community that I think we need to talk about because I have never heard of the pup thing I have watched on Twitter become a thing over the last few years.
I talked about this with my former employer. I've talked about this with people in the scene, like other handlers. I've been like, I have never experienced, like the pups are having a renaissance in the past 8 years. I have never seen so many of them. Well, Houston also is a big Houston and Galveston are big pup cities. And a lot of the subs who first like emerged, especially younger generation ones, I've noticed who are like, at least like 5-6 years younger than me, or like the caps off of Gen Z who are now coming of age.
Now, is the pup community an offshoot of the furry community, or is that just two different communities?
It's two different communities.
Okay.
Because furries is not immediately kink. Furries are just fursuit people. So they like portraying fursona, as they call it. While I am not a furry and I'm not very well versed in their lore, if you want to get one on here, please do, because they're usually hilarious. They're some of the quirkiest and most animated people.
Where to find a person
they walk
who would
amongst you.
I'm sure they do.
Look for people in computer or IT because they always work in tech.
Look, I'm sure that I hang around with enough Renaissance nerds that I'm going to find at least one or two.
No, Rennies are usually into bondage and impact play. Yeah. Yeah, every Rennie I've ever known is into bondage and impact play. They love role playing and bondage and impact play. I know you're out there. I know you're listening.
It's nice to know that my nerd community has proclivities.
The band as a former varsity choir kid, the band nerds were the people getting laid the most. And this is like a well-known fact about like Gen X and millennials. Band nerds got it on. And like, so even with our like after school parties and stuff that we would host, I was like, damn, I'm surprised y'all aren't coming back pregnant. And the band nerds would be like, we use contraception, you fucking idiot. And I was like, wow, not only are you like sexually active, you're also like really well versed. Good for you.
Well, I mean, no, that's not correct. I was actually going to say, when you're always putting something in your mouth, you want some kind of protection.
A little flute.
Yeah, so you want some. So I guess they would understand the idea.
You got to change the tenets out.
Yeah, they understand the tenets of protection better than anybody else. So it actually makes sense.
Great lung control. Yeah.
Are you saying that because you were in the band? Are you bragging?
Actually, like I said, I was in varsity choir, but I never took any of the woodwinds or anything like that. I was in orchestra for a long time, though. I took cello.
Did you have a lot of sex with band members, or
no?
You know what? I wish I did. Now that hindsight's 2020.
Yeah, I was out in Montrose with a fake ID, sharking daddies at the pool table at Mary's.
I tried to do the same thing. No one would ever let me in.
Aww.
No one would ever. I kept hearing all the stories from my fellow Gen Xers who were like, oh, I was 15 and 16 going into JRs and blah, blah. No one ever let me in.
Well,
there was a place.
I already had this mustache at like the age of 16, like this Burt Reynolds, Tom Selleckian mustache, and I just like did my hair in an updo and like tried to dress like a 22-year-old, and it worked. So I'm pretty sure the doorman at Mary's knew that I was underage. Wherever you are, thank you so much. And the queens who hosted karaoke were always like, what are you doing in here? And the mining company as well. But yeah, I stuck to where I knew I could get in. It wasn't until I was like of age that I would go into places like RIP or any of the others. I'm still not a fan of South Beach. I'm sorry. That's just not my thing.
Why are you telling me this?
Joel, I need you to not judge me.
I'm not here to judge you.
I know you don't care.
I remember when South Beach first opened in the 2010s, and we enjoyed ourselves, and that was that. But I'm done.
South Beach was for 3 types of people. It was for muscle queens, it was for twinks, and it was for the old bitter queens who like to go and hit on them, or like the DL guys who thought that was the place to go. And like what I also tended to notice after a while was that like it was where a lot of like the suburbanites thought they were supposed to go, and I was like, I do not want to deal with you and your security blankets getting in my face. I had one who yelled at me. This was like 2007, I think, and I was still like wearing polo shirts or whatever. I don't know. I was very androgynous at the time. And I remember he yelled at me, "Are you a man or a woman?" And I was just like, what? And I wasn't like old enough yet to like have like quippy comebacks. And I remember one of my lesbian friends was just like, "What the fuck did you just ask him?" And like proceeded to jump all over this person. And I was like, wow. What a world. Anyways, it's like fresh in my memory being on the patio of South Beach and having somebody yell that in my face. And I was like, aren't we in Montrose? Like, aren't you supposed to not yell that at people? Like,
way to go for our lesbian sisters to be the man in the situation when they need to be.
Whenever I tell you the number of times that like bull dykes and studs have saved my life, it's not
so
even
many
funny.
times.
It's not even funny.
So
like,
many
the
times.
Dykes on Bikes crew literally saved my ass one time at JR's because I got roofied, and I was like, I came down from singing my karaoke song, which nobody applauded for, because I'm not a Montrose karaoke person. They don't like my style of singing. I took a sip of my margarita. I was chatting with my friends. I stood up to go to the bathroom and just plopped. And suddenly I'm surrounded by like big, beefy, tanned arms and leather vests and very like husky sounding chocolatey voices that were just like, "What happened?" And I was like, "I don't know." And I was like dizzy and then just lost it. And I woke up the next morning in somebody's townhouse over behind Numbers in the Avondales. And I'm in like a king size bed in fleece pajamas. I don't know who undressed me. And somebody's bitch was bringing me a tray. And I was like, what happened? Mind you, I'm like a baby. I was like 20. And I was like, what happened? And she was like, you got roofied, sweetheart. And I was like, what? And I come downstairs and it's like literally they're hosting the Dykes on Bikes crew who were just touring through Houston. They're all these like gruff women being like, "Morning, sweetheart." And I was like, who are all of you? Who undressed me? Where are my clothes? Is that French toast? And I just ate and like had a great time. So yeah, studs and dykes and lesbians have saved my life on multiple occasions. I don't owe them anything. They don't owe me anything. I'm not saying you should like wait for a lesbian to save your life, but be your own hero and step in and save a baby gay, you know. But yeah, like I love them so much.
I know. We could not. Gay men wouldn't have gotten anywhere in this world without lesbians.
We're too horny.
We're
too busy being fucking horny. Like
we're too shallow or we're too horny.
I am so sick of this. I will literally. I tested this out the other day where I posted something about like ecological sciences on Facebook, like 6 likes. I posted something about global warming, like 10 likes. Posted something about the current political climate, 10 likes. Hinted in the next post at gay sex. 118 likes.
Of course.
So I know, 1, that's the algorithm, right? Because it doesn't like to share things that make people feel bad feelings. But 2, I also know that my entire fucking friend group, my friends list, quote unquote, which, by the way, just because it says friends doesn't mean we're actually friends.
Of course.
Every single fucking friend, follower, whatever thing I have on fucking Facebook, all of them were like, gay sex? Love that. And just immediately all of them were commenting like, "Ooh, that's sexy," or like heart emojis or whatever. And I was like, we are the dumbest group of fucking people.
But do you realize that in those same comment sections, it's always the gays who are like, why are we always talking about sex? Why are we always talking about sex? You bitches are horny all the time. Why are we always talking about sex?
Actually, not to call you out, because I know your journey of sobriety has recently started, and mine is in full swing of many, many years. But this is one that I love seeing from people who've recently gotten sober, of like, why aren't there more sober queer spaces? And my answer for that is always, make one. Because there are, it's just that they're usually focused around like recovery or like, you know, meetings and things like that. There are spaces for queer recovery. And my answer for that usually historically is, you know, well, that's because the only place that we could be safe was in bars and clubs. So alcohol and clubbing has become an essential core piece of our social community spaces. But if we want them, we can make them. They just keep getting torn down by the city of Houston. Because we used to have those. We used to have bookstores and places that were not sexual third spaces, but were still meant for queer and trans people to gather away from alcohol consumption and clubbing. And then they moved the Pride Parade downtown, and we lost that. So
I know that I put it out there in the world, but I put it out there for a different reason than most people do. I put my sobriety out there in the world. I put it out there simply because my journey with sobriety is a little bit different.
Okay.
And I don't want to downplay what everybody else's journey with alcohol has been with, because I know for a lot of, especially I grew up with alcoholic parents.
Yep.
I grew up with issues with alcohol myself. I'm not in a program. I'm literally in therapy, just doing my thing. But I've learned so much in therapy that I started to really look at how I drink and why I drink. And for 99.9% of the time was out of sheer boredom.
Yep.
Was out of sheer boredom. And the thing is, what I discovered when I was going through trying to research what ADHD was and all this other stuff and all the things that go with it, boredom was on the list.
Yeah.
And I was like, whoa. Okay, this explains. Okay, I get it now. I 100%. I think that's where I realized, wait a minute, now I know. Because I
like boredom as a symptom of ADHD, or like just like not being stimulated enough.
I just can't be. I'm not one of those people who knows how to relax.
Right. Okay. Yeah. I get you.
I need to always be doing something.
Right. Yeah.
And that is one of the symptoms of ADHD, which I would find. Yeah, which my therapist told me is the fact that because I do not know how to relax and do not know how to be in my space, I always need to have something to do.
See, I'm the opposite. I can literally sit in my living room, TV off, everything off, no sound, no music, anything, nothing entertaining me, and just zen. And I need that because I am a person who, like, one, with mind disorder, and two, with, like, the world, the way that it is, constant sounds, music, sights, noises, people, cars, whatever. There's moments where I will switch off the air conditioner, I will turn off the ceiling fan, I'll unplug the fridge if I need to because I can hear the buzzing, and I will sit in solemn silence and just be still for a while, and it is the most replenishing thing for me. I will put my phone on silent, and then the other room, there's times where people will be like, yeah, I haven't been able to reach you all day, where are you at? And I'm like, busy.
I cannot get to that point.
Okay.
I can still hear the voices in my head.
Yeah.
And they are constantly going. I have tried sitting in a room where I've shut everything down, where I put on my noise canceling headphones, shut everything off, that kind of thing. 3 minutes into it, I can't do it.
Yeah. I think the only reason that I can is because I have... one, I've been on meds for a very long time, and I've been stable on meds for a very long time. And two, that I've been sober coming up on 7 years now. And three, that I've been, I did the therapy thing for many, many years, learned a lot of techniques for coping and adjusting and how to, like, manage my symptoms. And you're not the first person to tell me, like, I'm not there yet. And I'm like, you may not be for a while, and that's totally okay. It's one of the catchphrases that as a person who is in sobriety, and does work with a program, it is the progress, not perfection angle that we tend to go on with that. And I encourage people, if there is something that you want to do with that, if that's a point that you want to reach, continue. If it's something you never want to reach, why work towards it? Yeah. How is the sobriety going for you, darling?
The sobriety journey, it's been actually going pretty well. I've had moments where last week I went to a bar, and my friends had invited. Now, for the last year, I've been pretty much to myself. I've not had. I've gone through some friendships where I've had to look at some of those friendships and go, it's not working.
Okay.
So it's left me a little bit on the lonely side, kind of. Yeah. And that's being open and honest.
I will say that's pretty typical of whenever people first stop using their dampening substances. Yeah.
So it's been a little lonely. So having some friends from work say, hey, we're going to a bar. I'm like, I don't drink. But you know what? I'm going to go because I just want to get out and have a little fun.
Yeah.
And, you know, they're sitting there. Now, first of all, I'm getting peer pressured. Immensely getting peer pressured.
Gross.
I'm sitting here drinking my Topo Chico, and they're like, Joel, you're not drinking? We've been talking about this for weeks. I'm not drinking right now.
Right.
I don't know if this is going to be a permanent thing, but for right now, I'm not drinking.
Right.
Because I need to know that I can stop when I need to stop.
Right.
And I found that it was easy for me to say no.
Yeah.
It was easy for me to, like, I'm looking at all these drinks. I'm not tempted in even remotely tempted.
Good for you.
Which was odd.
Okay.
I love to drink. Let me tell you something. I loved to drink.
Right.
I love a good martini in front of me. I love a bourbon and Coke when I'm sitting at home relaxing. I love hanging out with my friends and having a couple of beers and hanging out because it's social. It's social for me.
Absolutely. Yeah.
It's social for me. And then after I had a nervous breakdown not too long ago, about a year and a half ago, 2 years ago, was drinking at home a lot more and a lot more and a lot more. I wasn't running the streets like I used to.
Right.
Because I remember the days when I would get super drunk and run the streets, bring home any old thing that came my way,
Any old
blah,
paper
blah, blah.
bag, yeah.
Any old paper bag, couple of situations where I had to kick these people out.
They do that. Oh no! Don't put your bag down, honey.
Don't
Don't start
settle
taking
in.
stuff out. Don't
settle in.
Yeah.
You just gonna do what you need to do, take a shower and go.
Yeah. Here's a fresh razor. Yeah.
But being able to just sit there and enjoy it was the first time I've enjoyed myself in the bar without being drunk. Now, they did have alternatives. Here's what I love now about what the kids are doing, because we are really having a different idea of how we look at alcohol now.
Oh yeah.
A lot of the kids are not drinking like we drank. We drank.
Yeah.
We drank.
Yeah,
These kids are not drinking like this.
Nope.
They are not. They're looking for alternatives. The bars are actually catering to those alternatives. They have mushroom drinks now.
Of course.
They have THC drinks now. So I was able to have a THC drink because I still do like to have an edible.
Okay.
I still like to have an edible. It helps me sleep, and it helps me deal with my anxiety.
Right. Absolutely.
So, and I haven't had an anxiety attack in months.
That's wonderful to hear.
Months. When I'm sitting here just now realizing that I haven't had an anxiety attack in months.
That's a whatever. Anyways, I was gonna say that's a dang. I just lost the word. An achievement. Oh my god.
Yeah, I'm like, you know what I think about, because I honestly, the last 6 months, I felt like we've just talked. I felt like me and my therapist have just talked about stuff.
Yeah.
But I felt like we've never gotten super deep. And then when I go to my next session and she's telling me things and I'm like, wait. So me talking about work, we actually got super deep? Yeah, you got super deep. You told me things that you didn't. If you listen to what you're telling me sometimes, you will hear what's going on with you and how you're solving issues and problems and this and that. Because sometimes I talk a lot, but I don't listen.
Right.
So I'm starting to be more present. And sometimes I'm not present. One of the things about ADHD is sometimes I can be talking to you and
but
you and I can have,
here.
but I'm way over here.
Yeah.
I'm way over here. And people have for years touted at how great of a listener I've been.
And
Joel,
you're up here like
yeah. And in fact, I'm so far gone in some situations, I will literally daydream about some fantastical thing.
Absolutely.
One moment you'll be talking to me, the next moment I'm in D&D world fighting dragons or what have you, and I don't even know how I got there.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
And then I'll be looking at you going, oh yes, I heard every word you said in any way that I could make sure that they know that I was listening, but I wasn't.
It's one of the things that I've talked to about with some people who have tried like the full dry sobriety, because there's a difference between like being dry and being sober and recovering and blah, 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 because like I am completely off of everything other than like nicotine, caffeine, I do not drink, I don't smoke weed, I don't do any of the substances that I used to do. And there are people who have come to me or to the same programs that I do, and they're just like, I don't think I can do this. And I'm like, okay, well, what was your like thing that was ruining your life? They're like, it was like meth or coke or alcohol or whatever. And I'm like, okay, well, you don't have to do like complete sobriety. It's not for, it literally says in all of like the reading materials and everything that we do in our programs, like this program's not for everybody. And we also don't hold a monopoly on sobriety.
Yeah.
We're not telling you this is the only one. If it doesn't work for you, that's great. We encourage you to try again in whatever way works for you. And I have friends who have tried like smart recovery or other things, or like meditation based recovery and things like that, or they just simply have like stopped the thing that kept them from being stable, productive, happy, and healthy. And what you're describing is an example of that, of like, the drinking is really not doing it for me, but edibles do help me with panic attacks, anxiety. They help me fall asleep a little better. And I think that's wonderful. I will say that like, that is a slippery slope for me individually, because I am a person who, if I smoke a weed of weed, then I'm like, it sounds great right now. Meth. I don't know why. My brain is wired that way now after all these years. And it's so funny every time I talk to like I have a bestie who has been with me through all these roads of recovery and everything. And he is one of the funniest fucking people, because whenever he tells his story at groups or things like that, he's always just like, if I start with something like a beer or a joint, he's like, it's not long before I go get what I actually want. And he's like, and that's usually crack. And like the audience will giggle or whatever. He's like, or that's usually heroin. And like, cause it's such like a, it sounds great right now. And then it just, to casual listeners, it's like you went from eating a teddy bear gummy with like 5 micrograms of weed to wanting to suck a dick for dope. And I'm like, oh yeah, girl, so quickly. Like I release your inhibitions. Like it just happens like that. And I don't know why. And I now that I'm coming up on like my on my 7th anniversary, I'm currently in the time period of the year when I had hit like my lowest point 7 years ago. And as I look back on, because I kept a journal of whenever I like was in my lowest, and I kept a journal of whenever I first got sober, and it was like my last weeks before, and then my first 90 days. And I like to go back and read that and see like where I was back then, where Martin was at all those years ago, what my worries were, what I was concerning myself with, how I was communicating about people around me. And what I have found is that every single thing that I was so worried about, every person, every place, everything has completely left me. It's not something that I concern myself with at all nowadays. I was always worried about like what people thought of me, where I was going to live, how am I going to get a job, and like all of those things. One, like I used to be really worried about what people thought of me, and now I see way too many people sharing AI images and fake news articles, so I think I'm good.
Yeah.
And two, like worrying about jobs, worrying about places to live, worrying about all those things are typical worries for drug addicts, but I like to look back on where I was back then to see how far I've come. I think it's wonderful. I also have another friend who has the exact same sobriety date as me, and they are like several years behind me, but I like being like, because I knew them in the before time and the long ago. And I like anybody who manages to make this thing work for them. So one, seeing you make this work for you in a way that is productive, happy, healthy, and is making you feel good about it is wonderful.
Because I feel really good about now. I don't know. Maybe you will understand this, because this happened to me after I left the bar.
Yeah.
Now I got invited out afterwards to go watch soccer, which I'm like thinking,
football.
I'm gonna watch. These people are gonna go watch a bunch of Colombians running up the field in tiny little shorts.
I mean,
I should be in. But I was like, you know what? I know what's going to happen. I'm going to go, and then I'm going to see all these hot dudes, and someone's going to put a beer in my hand, and
an $18 beer.
And I'm going to go, you know what? I'm here. It's okay. I'm not on that kind of sobriety journey. Next thing you know, I've done something stupid, blah, 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 blah. I'm having to explain to someone, because one of the guys that was with my friend was really cute, but very straight, and I know who I am.
Right.
I know how I am when I see a cute guy.
You go after the straight dudes.
I don't make a habit of it, but I know that when alcohol comes into play, any hole is the goal.
Oh, I see.
So yeah, so
you're like,
if you're a straight dude,
you're like FIFA World Cupping it, trying to okay.
Yeah. So I'm like I'm gonna like go. I figure in my head when I'm in that drunk stage,
right?
Just talk to 10 dudes. Somebody will say yes, and it'll be the worst dude on the planet.
I can't do the straight guys. I'm sorry.
But
even whenever I was using or drinking or like young queer Martin, I was always like, no. And because the straight dudes would always do that thing where they're just like, I just want you to know, bro, like I'm cool with gay people, but like I'm straight, so like don't hit on me. And I would always be like, oh, don't worry, sweetheart, gay guys only hit on hot dudes.
I have been walking around calling everybody. I have been walking around calling everybody bro for the last 2 weeks, and I don't understand where that's coming from. But that's a different conversation. But the thing is that when I got home, after I said no, I'm not going to go. I'm actually just going to go home. It was thank you for letting me come out, but no, I'm going to go. And still in my head, I'm going. There is this voice in my head going, "What the fuck is wrong with you?
Yeah,
we should be going to do this. We haven't been out of the house in months.
That's your little that's your little party goblin.
Yeah, go do this.
Yeah."
And then I'm like, no, I'm going to go home, called my Uber, went home.
Yeah.
Got in bed, was watching TV, and the first thought that popped in my head was, you know what? I'm going to go to the store and get a Four Loko. And I'm like, wait a minute.
Yup.
And then my brain went into argue mode, where both sides of my brain are arguing with each other.
Oh, yeah.
And one side is going, are you fucking serious? Mm-hmm. What do you mean go to the store to go get a Four Loko? We were at a fucking bar where we could have gone to go watch hot soccer players and gotten drunk there. But you want to come home after all of that saying, oh my God, I didn't drink, blah, 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 blah. So you come home and drink? What the fuck is wrong with you?
You know what my reward should be? Not paying retail prices for alcohol.
Exactly.
Oh my God. First of all, I love that your brain was like, you know what sounds great? Four Loko. Mm-hmm. That's disgusting.
I know, that's disgusting. That is absolutely
that's
disgusting.
from somebody who used to drink like Old E and Steel Reserve. Like I was brown bag 40ing it. Like that's Four Lokos are nasty.
Four
Lokos are literally why
King
we have
Cobra. I tried King Cobra one time. Oh my God.
I couldn't do King Cobra.
Oh my God.
Steel Reserve on like the week between paydays, Old E on paydays. Like they used to call me Marty 40 Fingers because I'd have like at least 4 of them or 5 of them in bags whenever I showed up at a party. And they'd be like, hey, showed up with the 40s. And I'm like, yeah, but these are all for me, so don't fucking touch them. Like that is, whenever you do the math, 40 times 4 is what?
160.
160 ounces of malt liquor in my body. And I was one party, one evening from like 9 until 2 a.m. at somebody's house. And I would still have a great time. Like, I'm sure everybody else around me was suffering, but goddamn.
Because I had my fancy drinks. And then I had my weekday after work drinks.
Well, you know what's so funny? It wasn't until I started doing like stimulants, like meth, that I started doing I would be like at a bar or like at a high rise or something, like having like my dirty Manhattan.
Yeah.
And I'd be sipping. I want it so dry that like it literally evaporates the second that it hits my cotton mouth because I'm high as fuck on methamphetamine. And then I'd be sitting there watching people who couldn't handle their liquor as I've been sipping on this one $20 fucking cocktail for 6 hours. And I'd be like plebeian and just like my little, this disgusting olive juice, vermouth, and gin concoction that I fucking have with just a cigarette on a stick holder, acting like I'm better than all of you. Meanwhile, I'm hopping into the fucking bathroom to hit a pillow. The delusion is like just top notch.
I know.
Oh man,
and I had like I said, my alcohol had habits. During the week when we were broke, we went to the store. We bought our 2 for $2.99 beers.
Oh yeah.
And we would buy 4 of those.
Oh,
in the
like
16 ounce.
Yeah.
Yes, in the 16 ounce can. The 16 ounce can. So we didn't have to buy a 6-pack.
But then you come back after you drink the 2 of them and get 2 more of them.
No, you would buy 4. Because you have 4 of the tall boys.
Okay.
And that's about 8 beers. 8 or 9 beers.
Yeah.
8 to 10 beers.
Yeah.
Something like that.
Yeah.
So you didn't have to buy the 6-pack.
Yeah.
Now, that way I would save money on the 6-pack.
Right.
Because the 6-pack would just be the little kids, and I would just go through
Those
those.
are 12 ounces, yeah.
Yeah, I would just go through those like nothing. But the 18 and 24 ounces, you can sit it down, you can sip on it for a few hours. Yeah. Well, not even a few hours. You don't want to get hot. Yeah. No, maybe for like 20, 30 minutes. Mm-hmm. And then go do your thing. There were habits.
Yep.
And I feel like I've broken most of those. I've already gone 30 days.
Good.
Which I didn't think about until yesterday. And I'm like, wait a minute, I went 30 days. I went through,
Congratulations.
Feel like this is like when I quit smoking. When I knew that I was done with smoking.
Yeah.
When I knew, I had quit smoking so many times before it was ridiculous. Mm-hmm. But when I knew I was done with smoking, once I put it down, I was done.
So what kind of porn did you watch whenever you were drinking?
I like frat boys.
Work.
I liked frat boys.
This is why you hit on straight guys at soccer games. Yeah. Okay.
I like Latin dudes. Uh-huh. Of course, my black guys.
Right.
I like them to be a little bit older.
Okay.
I like my daddies.
Yeah.
Now, I kind of like, sometimes I like my daddies with my younger dudes, but not too young. Right. I like to know that it's like, okay, I know you're younger.
You're not in a onesie hugging up.
Yeah, you're not in a onesie hugging up. You actually look like a dude.
Right.
The age difference I'm okay with.
Right.
I mean, I loved older dudes when I was younger. I'm kind of confused what I like now.
I mean, as we grow, Yeah.
Younger dudes do hit on me, but even I look at them and go, no.
Can you write in cursive, little man? Yeah.
Yeah.
It was so funny because whenever I was using meth, I wasn't looking at a lot of porn because I was constantly in hotel rooms getting railed and having trains run on me. And then, like, whenever I got sober, I was... and this is something that's very common with people who get sober in the queer community on harsh substances like that, especially with meth. The sex world with our community and methamphetamine is so immediately interconnected that, like, it is, at least in my story, I was immediately, like, repulsed from sex for quite some time. And then whenever I did start to, like, have like feelings of sexual frustration or like I feel aroused again, it was maybe 6 months into me being sober. Then I remember one time, like I think I watched a video and was just like, no, I'll just use my own imagination. And I remember one time I got really bummed out on just life, it was like maybe 9 months, 10 months sober. And a friend of mine who was also sober was like, well, what you need to do is get laid, because it's been too long. And I was like, no, what I need to do is sit with these feelings, process them, and kind of just figure out like what's got me so down and, what's going on in my life that makes me feel this way instead of turning to sex as a coping mechanism.
Did sex also become an addiction as well? Or
it's literally hand in hand with it. Absolutely. Because the sex and the meth are together. Like it's sex meth parties. It's P&P, party and play, and it's something that I was, whenever I said to him, like, I need to sit with these feelings and process them and figure out, like, what's making me feel so down, what can I do about it, instead of just going to sex as a coping mechanism. One of the elder sober people was like, attaboy, and I was like, oh, did I say something right? And so now that's what I do. Like, if I'm just horny, I have a partner. We're having an open relationship. That's different. We're many years into this thing. But if I am feeling like down or angry or any of these other background emotions, and there's like the party goblin part of my brain that's like, you know what you should do? Go pound somebody. Go fist them. Just tie them up and beat the crap out of them. And I'm like, yeah, but why? Why am I feeling that? Is it from a place of like just genuinely I want to do that? Or is like, let me take a look at the emotions that are creating this knee-jerk reaction to want to tie someone up and spank them?
Yes, because now it becomes a conversation.
Right.
It becomes a full-blown conversation.
It's part of learning to process. It's part of learning to be self-aware. It's part of learning to be like, okay, because then you're not just using other people and their bodies. Then you're also not using sex and kink and things like that for just your own personal highs and lows, which is dangerous for drug addicts and alcoholics, and it's also dangerous for somebody like myself who is bipolar. Because me and a hypomania, baby doll, let me tell you, I can get at least 4 orgasms in. Like, bruh, it'll go. But anyways, I think that much like whenever it comes to being observational or self-aware of like the reasons why we want to drink, the situations that we find ourselves in, the highs or the lows, like, because, you know, whenever we're sad, well, we drink because we're sad. When we're celebratory, we drink because it's a good time. Southern culture tells us to drink all the time for medicine, for celebrations, for depressions, for just whatever. So it's very difficult to stop and go, okay, instead of knee-jerk reaction to want to drink for this, let's take a look at what I'm feeling, 2, why I'm feeling it, and 3, maybe what I can do about it, or if I can't do anything about it, 4, just to sit with these feelings and allow myself to feel them.
I think it's I think it's, and I don't want to say funny, but I think it's kind of, it is kind of funny. No, when you talk about your addiction, you talk about meth and meth and meth. When I think about addiction, and when I was growing up, it was cocaine.
Oh,
cocaine. Yeah. You could see that there is a generational difference because meth, to me, I was like, honestly, meth was never something, I don't think it's something that a lot of black people do. I don't think.
You know what's so funny?
It's not something that a lot of black people talk about. It was always crack and coke.
Crack and coke especially, because I mean, we can talk about Reagan all day. But what I will say that to counter that actually is that like the 2 guys that I hung out with the most during my addiction, who were like always my party people, who like we would head off to the parties with, were both black guys. And they both were, I mean, wherever you are, I hope you're doing great. And like, I'm not going to contact you because you're part of my addiction years. And they have reached out to me once or twice and I never responded because I knew they were still using, but they were both hung like fucking anacondas and they were just the sweetest men. And I was like, I love you both so much. I hope you're having a great day wherever you are, that you're safe and you're alive. But yeah, like just to put that on you. So I think that it is a substance that is used primarily by like 2 demographics of people, queer and trans community, and like rednecks and bikers, and that's about it.
Because I honestly didn't see a lot of meth until I went to Alaska. Didn't realize Alaska is the meth capital of the world at the time.
You are totally...
Did not realize that Alaska was the meth capital of the world.
It's so cold. What else are they going to do?
Exactly. I know they drank a lot. I know I drank a lot.
A lot of the Canadian border states, too.
Yeah, I drank a lot in Alaska.
Well, like marijuana and alcohol tend to be bigger problems down here in the South because literally if you try and do too much crack or too much meth down here, you're going to fucking die because it's 114 degrees outside.
I don't even think you can find crack. Can you still find crack?
Hell yeah. If you're looking for crack, I'm sure you can find some crack. Okay. But this is the thing, though. Is that this is one of the other things that, like, a lot of us who have been sober for a long time talk about. Is like, these drugs ain't the same drugs we was doing, baby doll. That overhead welding we were doing back in the day is not the same overhead welding you doing now.
No.
They've cut too much of this shit. It ain't the same coke. It ain't the same crack. It ain't the same meth. This is not the same shit. Like, because I'll be seeing people... I will be seeing some people who are, I don't know, Herman Park or just wherever at the Piers Elevated and some shit. And I'm like, that ain't you high on meth right now? And I'll look them up and down and be like, that ain't meth, baby. But like that, whatever the fuck you just. I remember during the years of Flocka, that synthetic methamphetamine that went around there for a while, who was turning everybody into like face-eating zombies and shit. Oh, that was bad. And that was like 2012. That was ages ago. Like, yeah, I don't know. Plus, everything nowadays is fucking cut with fentanyl. So, good luck. Yeah,
fentanyl has become the Midwest's worst thing ever. It's like their crack cocaine.
Yeah, somebody asked me recently, like, what is one of the reasons why you got sober and one of the reasons why you stay sober? And I was like, because I found out that I was like really bad at dying and I just happened to be like really good at staying alive. Yeah. So I decided to make staying alive worth it because I kept coming like really close to dying.
So many times.
So many times.
And
yet I just kept making it. And I was like, all right, well, I better make living worth it because this is, I'm really tired of waking up in hospital beds not knowing where the fuck I am. So
I am so glad. I never really was a big fan of Coke. I have gone to parties where I've seen Coke piled so high on the table.
I was a big fan of Coke.
where I've seen, piled so high on the table, I'm like, what is happening here?
So my auntie, who is from your generation, was the one who gifted me the greatest phrase of all time whenever it came to cocaine. Because, coke, 80s, shoulder pads, blue eyeshadow, big hair, cocaine. She said, it will never be as good as the first time you do it, and you will be chasing that high for as long as you're trying to do it. And
isn't that the same thing they say about meth too?
Absolutely. Well, this is something that I have told people is that, like, unlike crack cocaine or cocaine, you will be getting as high every single time. You just won't fucking notice it, and then you'll be up for 7 fucking days, and you'll start having, like, shadow people in the bushes, or like being extremely paranoid and delusional, and that's whenever you start having these scrawny little people with no shirt on holding a knife out in front of a corner store or something, being like, "Come and get me," and I'm like, "Whoa, that's meth." So yeah.
So for our listeners out there, yes, we are an hour and 40 minutes into this.
We sure are. Oh my God, we started rambling.
We are. Don't worry, listeners. I'm going to divide this up into 2 episodes so it could make it easier for everybody to just listen to 30 minutes here and 40 minutes. Yeah, 30 minutes here, 40 minutes there. That way I get 2 episodes. Yay.
Yeah. And then I won't have to do the trains and boats and planes to get over here again.
Well, maybe another time. Yeah. But I will make sure you get over here without having to be in the heat.
Thank you.
Because I figure if I'm going to have you on, I need to make sure you get here. You
can have me on for the fall collection.
Yeah, I need to make sure you get here because you're one of my favorite people to have on the show.
It's just casual conversation. It's so easy.
Yeah, it's so easy with us.
Yeah.
I love it when it's just like having Wendy on. It's so easy.
Wendy, we miss you.
We miss you, Wendy. We'll see you again. You wanna call it?
Yeah,
you wanna call it?
Honestly,
all right.
yeah.
All right. Well, we're gonna call it, and don't forget to subscribe, do all that stuff that they usually say you're supposed to do when you end the show nowadays. Subscribe, do this, do that.
Follow That Little Gay Talk Show on Instagram, YouTube. You guys do Spotify too, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I've looked you up on Spotify before. That's how I listened to my own episode like 30 times.
You can also go to our Facebook page, say hello on our Facebook page, send us an email at littlegaytalks@gmail.com. If you have some questions, want to send in some stuff, let's do that. Yeah. Let's do that. Yeah. So we're out.